Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Quantum Leap Season 1, Episode 8. So, we go into this episode and we come to find out that Ben coincidentally is leaping into a guy that is named Ben. And so, this isn't a younger version of Ben. We've kind of resolved that now. And so, we have, of course, Ben in this story leaping into a kid who is at a Sierra Youth Academy in 1996. Come to find out, all these kids who are trying to escape from this youth academy are to all have significant reasons for why they got there. We have one kid who is to have a self-harm attempt. We are to have Ben's character, who is a klepto who steals things. And so we seem to have all these kids who have one reason or another for them to go on and had been in this camp. So it's kind of almost for disciplinary reasons. So we have Ben at some point thinking that it's kind of unusual for all these kids to want to escape from this youth academy, this youth camp. But then come to find out, we will have all the reasons that these kids are to give Ben for why they escaped. Because it seems that this place is to, this youth academy, is to be doing some illegal things. Some things that would put kids' lives possibly in jeopardy by going on and putting them in, sweat boxes and stuff like that. And so that I thought was oh my god! We are doing something drastically different in this show, unless there is something like that in, of course, the original Quantum Leap. But yeah, we also come to find out in this episode that Ben is starting getting flashbacks tying in Janice. So by the end of this episode, we come to have Ben find out why he had gone on and leaped instead of Addison. Because come to find out, Ben is to have leaped so he can go on and save someone. And we'll find out who that is by the end of this episode. Going on and teeing this episode up a lot, but I thought I would kind of give people all the reason to want to go on and definitely watch this episode. Because I actually liked it. I thought this episode was a solid, good episode, regardless of kind of what they were doing with the kids, and you know what I mean, the stories and the stuff, you know. So, with that said, it seems that we are going to go on to possibly after this episode have this show take a hiatus or a break. So that's kind of sad, when actually it seems that this show is really getting some momentum or having me want to state positive things about it. So we'll see what happens when this show gets back, and hopefully I'll know or remember, or someone will go on and state to me when this show comes back after its hiatus. And so I, of course, was to not be interested in this show at first, but it seems that has turned. It seems that I have grown to be much more interested. Beyond, of course, people oh, you're only interested because this show's getting views or what. I really could just state that, I wanted to watch this show regardless. And plus, also me wanting to watch the original Quantum Leap again. There was no... Obviously, there is no, plan in places oh, people like this show. Great. So do I. Let's see what happens here. And plus, also, it's great to find people that all like either the original series or whichever, and they're all wanting to just talk about it, or they have more knowledge about whatever goes on in the shows and whatever than I do. So that's great. So, with that said, let's go into that double 5-time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this episode. And so with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into, of course, what is to be spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time you spend spoil this episode. So, let's go into it. So, we, from the last episode, are having Ben leap into Ben. And so Ben, of course, is to just kind of be taken off guard by all these kids running, and it seems that Ben is going to need to run with them because he's wearing the same uniform. So we have, of course, Roy, who is telling like Ben, like, "Hey, come on, like let's get out of here," and so Ben starts to follow. So we go on to have Ben get into this like SUV, this car, and he's looking at the rearview mirror and he's like, okay, like I'm this young kid. All right, let's see where we're going with this. And so all these kids are going on and they're driving off. Ben is to state, it's like, well, hey, like, so you guys have all like ran away from school. Like, why? So like they obviously state, it's like, well, Ben, like, you know why, we ran off. And Ben's like, I don't know. So we come to find out that this is 1996 and that Ben has leaped into this character. So what ends up happening while they're driving is we all of a sudden have the four of them that are all like talking about where they're going next. It seems that Stacy wants to go on and go off to Rio and immediately become this gambler and make a ton of money off of that. It seems that Roy is to go on and he wants to go to Alaska. And we have Leah, who actually, Leah, I like her performance compared to all the other like actors in this episode, in all honesty. Like, I don't know what it was about her, but she just really just stuck out. But Leah ends up mentioning that she just wants to go to see her uncle, and they kind of groan, and it's like, you should stay as far away from your family as humanly possible, because they're just gonna bring you right back to that youth academy. And Leia's like, no, like, my uncle is gonna be different, like, yada yada yada. So Ben doesn't go on and state where he's going, but so it seems while they're driving, we all of a sudden have Stacy, who gets into an accident with the car and flips the car. I'm like, oh my god! Like, this is crazy! Like, this is, what a way to just, like, kind of bring us in here to have all of a sudden this accident that comes out of nowhere. I was like, alright. So, like, giving me something that, like, is unexpected. So, they flip the car. We of course have Leia that's just kind of like on the car. She's like, help. So we go on to have Ben that takes her out of the car. And here's the one thing that overall does not make sense to me in this episode. So kind of spoiling what happens later on in the episode, but Leia gets her ankle broken. But she ends up getting her ankle broken while just tripping on this, like, anthole or something like that. And in my brain, I'm like, why wouldn't have Leia broken her ankle during the car flipping scene? Wouldn't that have made all the sense in the world to have had her injured there? But instead, Leia gets injured somewhere down the road? This makes no sense to me. But again, it gives the girl, like, a spotlight for her to, like, be like, hey guys, help me out, yada yada yada. So, anyways, so now I think at some point I should also cover the behind the leap stuff. But, like, but we'll get to that. So we have everybody going on and getting out of the car. And so this is, of course, the time when Addison is to come in to start talking to Ben. So we come to find out that Addison tells Ben that these kids were not reported, like, gone. Also, the guy who was to have had this car had wrote off in the insurance that he was to have crashed his car, and this is where it happened. So, like, whoever was on this youth academy was trying as much as possible to swipe everything under the rug, even to the point of when they find this car and like the guy's reporting it, it's like, oh yeah, like I had an accident and it's down here and so on and so forth. So Ben is looking at Addison and very confused. But then all of a sudden Leia is stating to Ben, it's like, oh, are you talking to your imaginary friend? And Ben is like, oh, yeah, I am. So we got to work that into the story now in this episode. So Leia states to Ben is like, oh, is that like your girlfriend? Like your imaginary friend? And, or, oh, do you have like multiple imaginary friends? Or like, how does that work? And Ben is like, oh, well, like, I'm talking to my fiance. I mean, my girlfriend, because I'm only 16. Oh, my bad. So Leia's just like, okay, all right. Like, well, hey, yeah, like, have you ever really had an actual girlfriend? And Ben is like, yeah. What if Ben would have said no? What if Ben would have just been like, no, I've always been single? But so Leia's like, oh, well, I've had a girlfriend too. Because come to find out, Leia will find out, like, likes girls. And so it's like, all right, like, cool. Like, however you want to write, whatever you want to write in the story. But Leia just becomes like a really cool character. So we have Leia who's just like, okay, like I'm fine with this weird, goofy, imaginary friend thing. So they all start walking, and so we have them like get their rations together. They're starting to pull from their backpacks to see like what all they have. And we have at some point where Roy is like putting on a hat that Ben stole from people, and so on and so forth. So they're all just starting to walk along, and we bizarrely have Stacy, who is talking about some cabin somewhere, and Addison is telling Ben, it's like, I don't think there's a cabin anywhere here. Like, there is no like map anywhere that says there is a cabin. What is Stacy talking about? Because I guess there's just a hope of a cabin, bizarrely. But so let's get to the behind the leap stuff, because technically this ties into, I think, at a point where Addison is going to have to talk to Ian at some point. So let's get into the other stuff. So we had Ben that goes on to tell Addison about Janice, how Janice had gone on to interfere with their leap, and also Addison, when seeing Ben, like Ben is like, oh, okay, like Addison, you're okay, but then he also tries to touch her, and he can't because hologram. And so Ben tells Addison about him dealing with a demon in the last leap, and that he, of course, was to see Janice. And so, come to find out now, Ian is to have figured out that Janice is interfering with their instruments, and that Ian is going to figure out how to track her down, because I guess there is a tracer that Ian can go on and figure out where she is. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we go on to have Ian, who is to track her down, and so both Jen and both Magic go into the elevator because they're going to track Janice down. But the whole problem is, all of a sudden, the headquarters ends up going caca. I'm bringing it back to the original Quantum Leap describing of something that goes bad. Caca. So we have Jen and Magic that are all of a sudden stuck in the elevator. Then Magic makes the clear consensus that Janice had been able to tap into the headquarters, and once Janice was to see that both Jen and Magic were going to get to her, and Janice has a clear sight of the elevator cameras, that she ended up turning off all of the power and do like a lockdown on all of the Quantum Leap headquarters so no one gets out. So Janice will have some time to scramble the heck out of wherever she is. So Jen and Magic are now stuck in the elevator, and it seems that Jen was getting phone calls from her father that she consistently ignored. And so, come to find out now, we have another moment of another character needing backstory. We don't need time to cover Janice more in this show. We just need to reference her. We don't need to cover Leaper X, because heaven forbid we've now had 2 weeks where we haven't covered that character. Now we need to go on and give more backstory for characters that we've already seen on weekly bases. Or basis? Anyways, so we have Magic and we have Jen. And so they're both in this elevator, and Magic is taking off his coat because he's frickin' Ernie Hudson. I recently just went on to watch like gameplay of like Ghostbusters Spirit Unleashed just to see what Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson were doing in that game. And it just seems like they have like a little bit of story, and then it's like Fortnite or Friday the 13th, the rest of the game. There's a lot of Easter eggs in that game, but like for $40, I'm like, okay, like it honestly should just be a thing for free, but whatever. Like it's another Epic Games thing, so I don't know. And it ends up being what it is. So going on. So Jen and Magic are having this heart-to-heart moment because, of course, Jen is talking about if she was to ever go on and legitimately take the time to be with her dad, it would kind of feel like she would have that kind of Charlie Brown moment with the football, where it's like, well, hey, when you get the football prepared and ready to go, and then Charlie Brown tries to kick it, and then the girl grabs it, and then Charlie Brown, like, plah, and he falls on his butt for the 80th time. Because, of course, now we're trying to relate Quantum Leap episodes with Charlie Brown, because why not? Peanut Gallery. Anyways, so Jen and Magic are continuing to talk here, and so Jen asks Magic, it's like, well, like, since my dad ended up calling you, because Jen wasn't calling her father, then Jen was asking Magic, it's like, well, like, what did my dad want? Like, does he need money? Like, is he gonna need to get out of jail? Does he need bail somewhere? And Magic is like, no, your dad is just lonely. Maybe you should call him, you son of a bitch. Maybe you should give him a little jangalang. He's just freaking, like, he's by himself. Maybe he's thinking of you on the holidays. Maybe you should just give a little bit of an effort. So Jen, after going on and having Addison rescue them, after Addison is to get the phone call from Ian, like, hey, can you give me a hand, Addison, helping both Jen and Magic get out of the elevator? And Addison's like, well, I'm also a little busy with this leap, but hey, I'll go on to help you guys out. So Addison goes out of the imaging chamber and is to open up the top part of this elevator, this little door, and Addison is to tell both Jen and Magic, it's like, well, hey, it's good to be real. She's just keeping it real. Anyway, so both Jen and Magic get out of the elevator after having this heart-to-heart talk, and immediately Jen goes on to call her dad, because she ended up calling her mother, the last episode? So Jen is now calling her dad, and they're, I guess, going to share some dim sum. It's great. So, obviously the worst part of Any of the behind the leap crap is just the worst part of the show. It just is. Like, it goes nowhere all the time. But I keep complaining about it every week. I can't help it. It's just a problem that I have. Excuse me. So, now for the rest of the other good part of the show, because I wanted to just get all that crap out of the way. So, we now go on to your regularly scheduled leap. So, we have Ben with all the kids, and they're consistently taking breaks, and certain people are almost dropping because they feel like they're getting heat exhaustion. And so Ben is consistently telling Stacy, like, well, hey, maybe we need to take a break. And Stacy's like, we've already taken 3 breaks already, and like we're almost out of water also. And so Ben is just like, oh my god, we're gonna die. Ben has consistently stated to the group that it's like, well, hey, the road is just right there. We can just go back to the youth academy and we could be alive. And they're like, no, we're never going back. Never. So Ben is just like, well, okay then. Like, I'm going to stick with this group no matter what because I want to make sure they make out of this okay. Because Ben feels responsible. So we go on and have Leah, who does the worst thing of this whole entire episode, and she trips and falls into this hole and is to break her ankle because her legs are just flimsy. So, man, you've been propping this girl up like all episode. Now you're gonna bash her for having a poor broken leg? Yes. I have twisted my ankle. I've done crap with my legs. I've freaking dislocated my knee and all kinds of crap. Just come on, just like pop it back in and just keep on walking. Here's a Slim Jim. Anyways, so Leah has her ankle now broken from this anthole that she fell into. And I know that people can go on and do that kind of stuff all the time. When I would ever like walk around in certain places, like especially like parks or whatever, at some points, like I would be just kind of walking around and there'd be this like hole or whatever that like I would just kind of like hurt my leg. And like it wouldn't be like so significant that I immediately like twisted it or whatever, but it would just be like, whoa, like okay. So I kind of limped a while until I could get my strength back, but still. I never broke my ankle, like Leia evidently did. So, we now have Leia who's dying because of her broken ankle. So, everybody's like, okay, like, what do we need to do to get this girl to continue to keep on walking? Or otherwise, we're just going to have to pull the gun out and just pow! And, like, she'll just be like a cow or a horse that ends up finding out that we have to kind of just old yeller her out of her misery. So Ben goes on and it's like, okay, well, from like imaginary girl Addison, I'm going to go on and ask her like what we need to get a splint into Leia's leg. And so we have Ben going on and like telling him like, okay, we need 2 sticks that look the exact same as one another, as if we bought them from some prop store because they look the exact same. And we also need some towels, like wrap it around, and then so they end up coming up with this unorthodox splint. And so Leia goes on to like get this one stick, and then so she's kind of like hobbling around. So excuse me, it seems like they've kind of slowed down a little bit because of Leia, but they're still continuing to go on here. I would have thought if Ben honestly should have just like picked this girl up and just been walking around with her, because how heavy is this girl really? But again, when really thinking about it, Ben probably does not have like the body strength of Ben. Meaning, we have to think about it this way. Ben has leaped into a 16-year-old body, which probably is not that strong. And so we have to come into the factor of when Ben is to ever leap into somebody, if kind of like in the disaster episode, the person that Ben's leaping into may not be the strongest person or may not be the most enduranced person. So Ben is also going on and like leaping into people that probably like they don't lift, bro. So when thinking about it, I was like, why not just like kind of pick her up and just kind of carry her around? But like that probably wouldn't work. So they go on, and so we have our characters continuing to talk, and so we have Addison telling Ben that there is probably water nearby. And so they're like, okay, let's just continue to walk. So Roy, Stacy, and Ben and Leia are all having this conversation. And so everybody's just kind of chiming in about like about what they should do, this and that, whatever have you. And so at some point when they finally make it to water, come to find out the whole place where water is supposed to be is completely dried up. And they're like, son of a... So Addison is saying, like, there was supposed to be water here. All of a sudden, Ben is to find out that there is some pipe that is by this water, this place that should have been water here. So Ben all of a sudden is getting this weird, bizarre flashback about this circle, and so Ben then goes on and is to realize, like, well, if there is a pipe, there is obviously some cabin nearby. So they just continue to walk. They end up finding this cabin. And so they all go in and they're like, oh my god, there's food in here. There's water in here. There's probably a turlet. But who knows? They didn't state that. Because, of course, in every show, no one poops. No one poops. No one takes a dump. No one pees. So, because it's a movie and it's a show. So, here's my thing. So, does a movie or a show, unless there's a shower scene, like, is there never a bathroom in a movie or a show? Like, what if you, like, went inside a movie or a show and you were looking for the bathroom? Would it not exist then because there is no part of the movie where the story allows for a bathroom? So would it not exist? That is a dumb question, but hey, like when thinking about it, no one poops in a movie or a show. So, like in Star Trek Next Generation, is there a toilet on the ship anywhere? Because they never, like I think in the later seasons they show people showering. But yeah, anyways, moving on. That's a weird, goofy thing that I had to state. But anyways, pushing on. So, we go on to have our people now eating all their food, and Ben is talking about getting the generator going, and Stacy's like, no, we have all the candles that we could need. And so we go on, and everybody seems to be happy. And so Ben is to go on and find out more about the youth academy and why they left. And so Roy is stating to Ben, it's like, well, you know about like those hot boxes, right? Where they would kind of just set you out there for a number of days to as punishment to like think about what you did and so on and so forth. And Ben is like, oh my god, like this is why these kids had ran away from being in those hot boxes, those sweat boxes, and like no wonder. So like this youth academy is doing something wrong here, and hopefully we're gonna go on and figure out a way to out these people for the wrong that they're doing. So, but we end up going on to have all the kids just dance. Because at one point, we're wanting Roy and Stacy, who are telling Leia, it's like, well, hey, like, we're going to finally have some fun here, and we're definitely going to go on and we're going to dance. Because Leia had gone on to just call her uncle, and so, like, it seems that Leia is going to get picked up by her uncle, because that's where she was going. And so Roy, Stacy, and Ben, and even Addison are going in and just starting to dance. And Ben is like, oh, I don't know, I don't think I can dance. And so all of a sudden, like, Ben, we start seeing him, like, doing, like, the sprinkler. He's doing sprinkler, and he's doing all this, like, this and that or whatever. And so, like, everybody is starting to dance. And so we have Leia, who Steven mentions, like, well, hey, I have a broken ankle, and you guys still want me to dance? And like, yeah, just hop around. We're all going to hop, and we're all going to dance just like you are. So, like, a lot about this episode is just to remind me about all of those, like, kind of camp movies and shows or whatever, like Camp Nowhere and all those other just kind of camp movies. Even though we have kids who are out of the camp, it still reminds me of those kinds of things. So, come to find out, we have the Youth Academy guys, the guys that work there, guys who are to be Sullivan and Ringer. We have them finding out that these kids are possibly to be at this cabin, and so they're having these flashlights, and they're trying to look for the kids in this cabin. And so we have the kids that end up going outside and are kind of around in some part of the slot, or part of the corner of one of the parts of the cabin. And so Leia ends up going on to, like, present herself and call out for both Sullivan and both Ringer, so that way they can go on and grab her and bring her back to the Youth Academy. Leia goes on to mention that the reason why she was here and not all the other ones is because she ended up breaking her ankle, and all the rest of them said that they were slowing her down. So Leia ends up going on to have the guys, like, grab her leg, and she's like, ah! And they're like, well, I guess she's not faking it. Do you think she was freaking faking that? What kind of garbage is that? Come on, people. Like, why would she have all that, like, wrapped around her leg? Just be like, no, it's a diversion. Get him, guys! No, this girl really has a broken ankle. Besides her just being an actor, pretending she's hurt, broken ankle still applies. So, we have Ringer and Sullivan that grab Leia and put her in the Youth Academy. And so I think they're going to go on and torture Leia for information for where are the rest of the kids. So now we have Ben, Roy, and Stacy. And so we have at one point where Ben was to go on and tell Stacy that of all the people, like, Stacy out of everybody, like, is the leader of this group. And so, like, trying to give, like, Ben, like, a time where it's, like, pointing out, like, who's going to really be the person that is going to lead this group the best, and that should actually be Stacy. So we go on, and so the rest of the group are coming up with a plan of, like, well, like, I think we're gonna need to go back to that Youth Academy and rescue Leia. And they're like, what? Like, are you crazy? No! Like, we're not gonna go back. And Ben is like, well, think about it. Like, we're going to actually have Leia help us out to free her. And they're like, what are you talking about? Ben, I think, has been sipping a little bit of too much imagination juice from his imaginary adult friend. That was a stupid joke, but I made it anyways. That's not legitimately what they said in the show, but that's what they should have just said. Excuse me. So we go on into this episode, and so all of a sudden we're back at the youth academy. All the kids are now like, yeah, let's get there. And we all of a sudden find out that they're not alone, because all of a sudden Leia is to have her uncle come to the youth academy, and he is a reporter, and he has this microphone out, and he's just like, hey, like, are you Sullivan? Are you Ringer? Are you the guys who orchestrated this whole youth academy? Hey, are you the ones that have put these kids in these sweat boxes like I see here? Like, hey, what comments do you have about this youth academy? And the guys are like, no comment. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you guys are going to get the cuffs slapped on you pretty soon anyway, so say nothing all you want, because there's obvious evidence here. There's a bunch of witnesses from all of these kids that are going to put you away for a very long time. So we then go on to, of course, have Ben, who is getting all the kids together, and like the uncle is going on like, yeah, like you guys are gonna be like giving me sworn statements and all kinds of things, and give me your story and everything like that. You're exclusive, so like I can go on and make a huge story out of this, because it seems that Leia's uncle is to go on and further find a number of youth camps in the future that are all to try to do the same thing. And so, Leia's uncle is going to go on and make like a life priority out of going on and finding all these other youth camps that are just as crooked as this one. So it's like, yeah, like this is going to be like a catch the predator kind of thing, but instead it's going to go on and have Leia's uncle go after all these people. Like, yeah. And so Addison is going on and telling all this stuff about where everyone becomes, like how they're gonna end up all being all good and everything like that. Everything's gonna work out for them, and yada yada yada. So Ben ends up remembering about Janice and all these flashbacks and how he's connecting them all, and so Ben kind of walks away to talk to his imaginary friend. And so Ben goes on and tells Addison that the reason why he had gone on and leaped in the first place was to go on and protect Addison, because something is going to happen to her. And so Ben leaps shortly thereafter that. I'm like, what? Something's going to go on with Addison and Ben doesn't know what it is? But so Janice is somehow wanting to help Ben save Addison? So is Janice a bad guy? Is she a good guy? I'm confused. Who is Janice then? Like, let me know in the comments below if you feel that Janice is still evil, or if she's not evil and she just misunderstood. Because maybe Janice came up with or found some information that Ben wasn't aware of. So maybe there's a whole goofy thing here where Janice is not as evil as she is made out to be. But again, we're also possibly thinking, in my brain, bizarrely, that who we think is to be the people that Ben should be with and helping and whatever, maybe there's something wrong about them. Wouldn't that be cool? Because again, that would be kind of like a huge twist of this story to find out, oh yeah, maybe some of this group maybe is a shady person, and we'll find out who that is. There's a mole in the Quantum Leap thing. That would be just kind of a cool idea, but again, they probably set up all of these characters. Why would they make all of a sudden one of them a villain? Maybe they'll present that in season 2. Maybe that'll be one character will come in as the new guy, hey everybody, yeah, I'm gonna go on and help you guys out, and then come to find out he ends up being the bad guy for the whole season, and we didn't even realize it. Maybe he was effing stuff up the whole entire time, and we didn't know. Also, I think in the other original thing, I couldn't come up with the word Ziggy in the last original Quantum Leap review. And so I was like, what is his name? Gushy something? What is it? It was Ziggy. I forgot. Because it's like every once in a while, I haven't heard Ziggy that often. So I would probably go on and forget about it. So with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about this episode, whether you hated it, whether you liked it, whether you were just kind of still like on the fence about this show. I don't know how I still feel about the show. I don't know either. But either way, I'm still going to watch every episode whenever it comes back. So the funny thing is, when this show will come back, then there'll just be this episode of me just going on like, yeah, like this show hasn't come back yet. And then anyways, so I'm going to get out of here to try to make this a little bit shorter, even though I've almost talked and rambled for 40 minutes. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.